By the way, speaking of old things, politics, Senator Chuck Schumer is saying that the president and a lot of congressional leaders of both parties agree to keep the government funded through at least December 15th. It's sort of like cobbling together a deal that keeps the government lights on for a few months tops. It's not ideal, but it will do the trick and secure that $8 billion aid package, the first tranche of it for Hurricane Harvey victims. To Citizens United, President David Bossie, USA Today congressional reporter Eliza and FBN senior correspondent Charlie Gasparino. Charlie, ended with you. Not pretty, but the only deal they could do. What do you think?
I think it's good. You get through this period, maybe get the storm relief to Texas, and then start getting tax reform going. I will say this though, it struck me. Listen, North Carolina is essentially a red state, right, run by with a Democratic senator. I could see how the people there want lower taxes. But if this thing does fail, okay, and this is the other part, what Kellyanne Conway says, it's Congress's fault. But if this thing does fail, it's a failure of the president. And here's why. All you have to do is turn back the clock. Look how Ronald Reagan got real tax cuts and tax reform done. He did.
Well, they got Democrats on board.
But he did Oval Office addresses, and he sold it to the American people.
Do you think it's going to fail? I think he might get it, but it might not be what people imagine.
But if it does fail, it's on him.
Right. Eliza, what do you think of that? That the pressure's on the president now. He's putting himself out there in a way that he didn't do on the health care revamp, so it's his hiney on the line here.
I think that's the exact point. He didn't do that on the health care revamp. We saw the Affordable Care Act's popularity go up. People did not want it to be repealed. And he could kind of step back and say, look, it's Congress's fault. This is something, he's a businessman. Tax reform is definitely in his wheelhouse, and I think he feels comfortable there. But he also was criticized for stepping back on tax reform. But on the other end, he owns it. If this doesn't happen, he's out there. He is the face talking about tax reform.
You know, David, I could interpret the number of Democrats who've at least been open. I had Henry Cuellar on here a little while ago. He's open to this as a possible yes vote, which leads me to believe that they've gotten, that is, Democrats, some assurances this will not be tilted to the rich, if at all. How would you feel about that?
Well, first of all, it's great to have Democrats finally listening to the American people. Look, it's one of the reasons this issue is one of the reasons that Republicans are in charge of the House, the Senate, and now the White House. The Democrats were disconnected, and I just disagree with Charlie. The president has made tax reform a centerpiece of his administration, a centerpiece of his campaign, and I will tell you...
How many Oval Office addresses has he done?
Look,
I don't think... Compare that to Ronald Reagan. Compare it to Reagan.
Charlie, it's a different atmosphere today.
Well,
the American people.
It's called selling.
The art of the deal. The president is the best marketer in chief this country has ever seen. It is not from his lack of selling. So
well,
let's just talk about this.
Eliza, are you hearing that the president might have the support he needs? We still don't know the details, truth be told. But I'm the one who's connecting the dots to say if you're getting Democrats interested, you've obviously thrown a bone to them that is politically palatable for them, which would include not giving away big tax cuts to the rich, whatever your views on that subject. So is it your sense that the president is greasing the skids for something that could be done this year?
I'm not quite sure. I think the fact that he's with Heidi Heitkamp today is a huge deal. That being said, North Dakota...
Why is it a huge deal? Are you assuming that she's a yes vote? Because sometimes it doesn't pan out that way.
That's true. But she's not a hard no, which is where Democrats were on health care. So I feel that there's some wiggle room, some flexibility. They're doing it through reconciliation, which is that budget procedure where they only need 51 votes. One Democrat helps. You know, health care only lost by one vote.
No, you're right about that. Well, how would the markets react to something that's watered down? You said something profound yesterday, Charlie, and as you often do, that it's really about the corporate tax cuts. Don't go any higher than 20, ideally 15. But you do that, you're well on your way to a market's liking it, even without some of this other stuff.
I mean, here's what I would say. If they raise taxes on the rich, which essentially Gary Cohn said, and by the way, the rich, meaning the top 5%, pay 50% of the taxes, that's not a stimulative activity for the economy.
But the idea being that they'll benefit from those lower corporate taxes.
The thing that would stimulate, if they do that, would be a real corporate tax cut. Now, here's where the devil gets in the details. If they get rid of all the loopholes, right? that means you literally have to take the corporate tax rate down to 20% for it to have any stimulative impact.
Okay.
The president
David,
would
could
like...
I just get your reaction to this?
Sure.
I hate to hit your broadside, but you're so good you can react on the fly. The president just said on Air Force One, just told the pool that he struck a deal for a debt ceiling increase to keep the government running through December 15th, in addition to that Harvey funding. So as we've reported, clumsy, and not blaming him or the parties that beat this is the best they could do, avoiding any talk of fiscal chaos or debt ceiling, disaster, but through December 15th. Now, anyone's guess what will be happening around Christmas time to renegotiate that further out. But what do you make of this?
Well, first of all, I dislike, along with a lot of other people, running a government from emergency to emergency, and that's one of the things that we want to get away from. We would like to have.
I don't think they'll ever get away from this sort of thing.
Well, maybe not. But let's just talk about the corporate tax rates. The president has said he wants 15%. I think we need to have it in the teens. 20% absolutely tops. But what really has to happen here is the subchapter S's as well. Small businesses, not just big businesses.
And they pay at the top marginal rate. A lot of them pay at the top marginal rate.
Absolutely. And they need a break. They need a relief. That's who's
hiring. How will they react to getting no relief?
Well, listen, already investors are factoring in the different scenarios. If they don't get relief, it's subchapter F. If the corporate tax cut is at 25% and they close loopholes, which means it could be a tax increase, I am telling you the markets will trade off on that.
Well, let me, Eliza, your final thought on this, that to Stuart Varney's point, we were chatting about it earlier, something is better than nothing. It's not ideal. It's not what was originally envisioned. Again, we could be all wrong on some of these scant details. I don't think I am. But how do you think this all will go down?
I think what you're saying, something is better than nothing. Republicans need a win. Congress needs a win. I mean, they have not been able to pass any major legislation. Again, it's this emergency to emergency.
But if it's baloney, it won't matter. I mean, I'm telling you, if it's a win, okay, we got tax reform through, but it's really a tax increase because the corporate rate's down to 25% with all the loopholes closed. If
they can't do that.
They can't do that. Markets will sniff that out in a second.
We need real tax reform, and the economy is ready to take off. Look, we're growing at 3% right now in the third quarter.
The Republicans will argue. Some of them have talked to me and said that it could set the stage for bigger things and fight another day. Maybe
20% rally in the markets, maybe.
Guys, I want to thank you all.